Paris was under siege, starving, suffocating. Sparrows vanished from the rooftops, the gutters ran dry. People ate whatever they could find. Monsieur Morissot, a watchmaker by trade and a soldier by fate, trudged along the outer boulevard on a clear January morning, his stomach empty, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his uniform trousers. Suddenly he stopped, spotting another soldier, an old acquaintance. It was Monsieur Sauvage, his companion from many a Sunday fishing trip. Before the war, every Sunday at dawn, Morissot would take the train to Argenteuil, bamboo rod in hand, a tin box slung over his shoulder. He'd ride to Colombes, then walk to the Isle Morant, and once he reached their cherished spot, he'd cast his line and fish until evening. Each Sunday, he'd meet another devoted angler there, Monsieur Sauvage, a cheerful, stout haberdasher from Rue Notre-Dame-de-Lorette. Often they sat side by side, rods in hand, legs dangling over the water, and soon a strong friendship blossomed between them. There were days they didn't speak at all. Sometimes they chatted, but even in silence they understood each other. They shared the same tastes, the same quiet joys. In spring, around 10 in the morning, when the sun, young again after winter, rose over the calm river, lifting a gentle mist that drifted with the current and warmed the backs of the absorbed fishermen, Morissot would sometimes say to his neighbor, "Eh, what a lovely warmth." Sauvage would reply, "Nothing better." Those few words were enough to affirm their mutual respect and understanding. In autumn, toward evening, when the setting sun painted the sky in blood-red hues, mirrored in the water, flooding the river with crimson, gilding the horizon and the yellowing trees that trembled at the approach of winter, Sauvage would smile and say, "What a sight!" And Morissot, eyes fixed on his float, would answer with admiration, "Prettier than any boulevard, wouldn't you say?" Now, recognizing each other, they exchanged a firm handshake, moved by the encounter in such changed circumstances. Sauvage sighed and murmured, "Well, here we are." Morissot muttered gloomily, "And the weather? First clear day of the year." Indeed, the sky was bright, bathed in light. They walked side by side, thoughtful and somber. Morissot spoke again. "Fishing. Ah, the memories." Sauvage asked, "When will we go back?" They stepped into a small cafe, drank a glass of absinthe, and returned to the street. Suddenly Morissot stopped. "Shall we have another?" Sauvage readily agreed. With pleasure, they entered another tavern. When they emerged, their heads were foggy, as happens when one drinks on an empty stomach. The air was mild. A gentle breeze caressed their faces. Sauvage, softened by the warmth, stopped. "What if we went?" "Where?" "Fishing." "But where exactly?" "To our island. The French outposts are at Colombes. I know Colonel de Moulin. He'll let us through." Morissot shivered with longing. "Let's do it." "I'm in." They parted to fetch their fishing gear. An hour later, they were walking side by side along the main road. They reached the villa where the colonel was stationed. He listened to their request, smiled, granted permission, and gave them the password. Soon they passed the outposts, crossed the deserted Colombes, and arrived at the edge of the vineyard sloping down to the Seine. It was around 11 in the morning. The village of Argenteuil, sprawled across the river, looked deserted. The heights of Orgemont and Senoise loomed over the entire region. A wide valley stretched toward Nanterre, its cherry trees bare, its soil gray and lifeless, utterly empty. Monsieur Sauvage pointed to the hills and whispered, "The Prussians are up there." A chill passed through both men at the sight of this silent, abandoned landscape. The Prussians, They had never come face to face with them, yet for months they had felt their presence encircling Paris, unseen, omnipotent, ravaging France, looting, killing, starving the people. Their hatred for this unknown but victorious enemy was laced with a kind of superstitious dread. Morissot murmured, "What if we run into them?" Sauvage replied with that ironic squint that, come what may, remains the hallmark of a true Parisian. "We'll treat them to some fried fish." Still, they hesitated, reluctant to step into the open field, as if wary of the silence that reigned around them. At last, Sauvage made up his mind. "Well then, let's go." But carefully, they began descending through the vineyard, crouching, crawling, hiding behind every bush, glancing nervously around, listening intently. Only a narrow strip of bare ground remained between them and the riverbank. They dashed across it and, reaching the edge, crouched low among the dry reeds. Morissot pressed his ear to the ground, straining to catch any sound of footsteps. But all was still. They were alone, completely alone, and gradually, reassured, they began to fish. The deserted Almirante, lying opposite, shielded them from the far bank. The small restaurant building stood boarded up, as though abandoned for years. Sauvage caught the first gudgeon, Morissot the second. The rods twitched again and again, and silvery fish fluttered on the lines. The fishing was truly splendid. They carefully placed their catch into a rope net with fine mesh, lowered into the water at their feet. Joy surged through them, that deep joy that fills a man when he returns to a beloved pastime long denied. The gentle sun warmed their backs. They heard nothing, thought of nothing, forgot the world. They simply fished. But suddenly a dull sound, like a subterranean tremor, shook the ground. The cannons had begun again. Morissot turned his head and saw the silhouette of Mont Valérien rising to the left, its summit crowned with a white plume, a freshly fired powder cloud. A second puff followed above the fortress, and moments later another boom echoed. Then another and another. The mountain spewed its deadly breath minute by minute, releasing billows of milky smoke that rose slowly into the tranquil sky, forming a cloud above the peak. Sauvage shrugged. "There they go again," he said. Morissot, eyes fixed on his float, suddenly felt a surge of anger. The anger of a peaceful man toward the madmen who refused to end the slaughter. He muttered, "What idiots we must be, killing each other like this." Sauvage added, "It's worse than beasts." Morissot caught a bleak and, gazing at it, said, "And it'll go on like this as long as governments exist." Sauvage tried to object. A republic wouldn't have started a war. But Morissot pressed on. With kings, war is waged against foreign enemies. With republics, it's fought within. And they calmly began to argue, discussing politics with the plain logic of simple, peace-loving men agreeing on one thing: man will never truly be free. Meanwhile, Mont Valérien kept thundering, tearing down French homes, ending lives, destroying people, shattering dreams, breaking cherished illusions, joys, and hopes for happiness, inflicting suffering on the hearts of women, girls, mothers, here and across the world, suffering without end. "This is life," said Monsieur Sauvage. "Better say, it's death," Morissot replied with a faint smile. But suddenly both men flinched. Behind them, footsteps rang out, clear, deliberate. Turning, they saw 4 men above them, armed, bearded, dressed in strange, livery-like uniforms, flat caps on their heads. All 4 had rifles aimed directly at them. Their fishing rods slipped from their hands and drifted downstream. Moments later, they were seized, bound, thrown into a boat, and ferried across to the island. Behind the house they had thought abandoned, nearly 24 German soldiers were stationed. A hulking brute, seated astride an overturned chair and smoking a large porcelain pipe, addressed them in flawless French. "Well, gentlemen, did the catch go well?" One of the soldiers laid the net full of fish at the officer's feet, taken from the captives. The Prussian smirked. "Ah, yes, I see you were lucky. But it's not about the fish. Listen calmly. In my view, you are spies sent to track me. I've detained you and will have you shot. Fishing was merely your cover. But you've been caught, and that's your misfortune. Such is war. You pass through the outposts, which means you must have the password to return. Give it to me, and I'll let you go." The 2 friends stood side by side, deathly pale, silent. Their hands twitched nervously. The officer continued, "No one will know. You'll return home quietly. The secret will vanish with you. But refuse, and you die. Decide." They stood motionless, not uttering a word. The Prussian, still composed, gestured toward the river. "Think. In 5 minutes you'll be down there. 5 minutes. You have family, don't you?" Mont Valérien continued to thunder. The fisherman remained silent. The German gave an order in his own tongue. Then he moved his chair away from the prisoners, and 12 soldiers lined up 20 paces off, rifles at their feet. The officer said, "You have 1 minute, not a second more." Suddenly he rose, walked over to Morissot, took him by the arm, led him aside, and whispered, "Quick, the password. Your friend will know nothing. I'll pretend to have relented." Morissot said nothing. The Prussian led Sauvage aside and repeated the same offer. Sauvage, too, remained silent. They were placed side by side again. The officer gave the command. The soldiers raised their rifles. At that moment, Morissot's gaze fell by chance on the net of gudgeons lying in the grass a few steps away. A sunbeam danced across the silvery bodies, still trembling. Morissot felt faint. Try as he might to stay composed, his eyes filled with tears. "Farewell, Monsieur Sauvage," he whispered. "Farewell, Monsieur Morissot," replied Sav. They shook hands, their bodies trembling. The officer shouted, "Fire!" 12 shots rang out as one. Sauvage collapsed instantly, face down. Morissot, taller, swayed, turned, and fell across his friend's body, face up. Blood streamed from his pierced chest. The German issued new orders. The soldiers dispersed, then returned with ropes and stones, which they tied to the legs of the dead. The bodies were carried to the riverbank. Mont Valérien kept roaring, shrouded in smoke. 2 soldiers took Morissot by the head and feet. 2 others lifted Sauvage. They swung the bodies and hurled them into the water. The corpses traced an arc and sank, dragged down by the stones. The water splashed, churned, then stilled. Only gentle ripples spread toward the shore. A single drop of blood remained on the surface. The officer, still calm, murmured, "Now the fish will take care of them." He turned toward the house. Suddenly, he noticed the net of gudgeons in the grass. He picked it up, examined it, smirked, and called out, "Wilhelm." A soldier in a white apron came running. The Prussian tossed him the catch and ordered, "Fry these little ones while they're still fresh. It'll make a fine dish." And he lit his pipe again.